Josh believed heartbreak was something that happened to people who were careless with love, not to men like him. He was disciplined, careful, selective, the kind of man who studied people the way he studied light, angles, timing, exposure, everything calculated. So when his friend broke down over a failed relationship, Josh didn't comfort him, he analyzed him, he judged him. He was certain of one thing: if he chose right, treated right, and loved right, no woman would ever break him. He was wrong, and he didn't realize it until the day silence answered every message he ever sent. Josh was a man who believed in control. At 28, he had already built a life that many people spent decades chasing. He was a professional photographer, known for precision, discipline, and an eye that could turn ordinary moments into something unforgettable. His work had taken him across continents: Paris, Milan, Cape Town, and into rooms filled with celebrities, executives, and people who only moved in circles of influence. He did not chase opportunities. Opportunities came to him. Everything in his life followed structure. Timing mattered, decisions were calculated, and results were predictable, especially when it came to people. One evening, he sat with his friends in a quiet lounge, the kind of place where conversations carried more weight than the music playing in the background. Glasses rested on the table, half full, untouched for minutes at a time. Ken spoke first. His voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual confidence. He had just come out of a relationship, one that had ended in a way he still could not fully explain. His words came slowly, as if each sentence cost him something to say. He said she left. Not after a fight, not after a clear mistake. She simply left and moved on with someone else. Josh listened without interruption, his expression calm, almost analytical. When Ken finished, Josh leaned back slightly, exhaled, and spoke with quiet certainty. He said, "A woman does not just wake up one day and break a man's heart without reason. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. Maybe not obvious, maybe not intentional, but something." He said people do not leave good situations unless something inside them has already shifted. Ken looked at him, tired, searching for something softer in his response, but Josh did not change his tone. Another friend leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. He spoke more carefully, choosing his words with intention. He said, "Sometimes it is not about what you did wrong. Sometimes it is about what the other person decides. People stay because they want to stay, and when they no longer want to, no amount of effort can hold them." Josh shook his head slightly. He disagreed. He said he would never find himself in that position. He said he would take his time, choose the right woman, and treat her right, fully, intentionally, without shortcuts. He said when you do things properly, outcomes follow, and because of that, no woman would ever have a reason to break his heart. The conversation moved on, but the words stayed. Days turned into weeks, and Josh returned to his routine. Flights, shoots, edits, meetings. His world remained consistent, predictable, controlled, until a call came in that shifted the direction of everything. A corporate brand had an international event in Dubai. They needed full coverage, high-level production, no room for mistakes. They asked for Josh. He accepted immediately. The flight was long, but he welcomed the distance. Travel had always been a space where he reset, where the noise of routine faded into quiet focus. He took his seat, adjusted his posture, and prepared to spend the next several hours in silence. Then she sat beside him, Lisa. She did not try to start a conversation. She settled into her seat with a calm presence, the kind that did not demand attention, but carried it naturally. For a while, they remained strangers, two people sharing space without interaction. Then their eyes met briefly. A polite nod, a simple greeting, the kind that usually ends there. But this one didn't. A question turned into a response turned into a conversation, and before long, the silence between them was gone. She spoke clearly, confidently, without unnecessary words. She was a journalist, traveling for the same event in Dubai. Different purpose, same destination. That detail changed everything. The conversation deepened. Work led to travel stories. Travel led to perspectives. Perspectives led to something more personal. Values, habits, the way each of them saw the world. Josh found himself engaged in a way he didn't expect. Not distracted, interested. By the time the plane began its descent, the distance between them had already shortened. They exchanged numbers without hesitation. Dubai welcomed them with its usual intensity. Lights, movement, a city that never seemed to slow down. During the event, their paths crossed repeatedly, sometimes briefly, sometimes long enough to talk. Each interaction built on the last, layering familiarity over curiosity. After the event ended, they both had time, free time, and without needing to discuss it much, they chose to spend it together. They walked through a mall that stretched endlessly, moving from store to store without urgency. Conversations flowed easily, without effort. Laughter came naturally, without performance. That evening, they stepped out into the city again. The air was different at night, cooler, quieter. The lights reflected off glass buildings, creating a soft glow that made everything feel slightly removed from reality. Josh found himself relaxed in a way he didn't plan. There was no calculation, no structure, just presence. Lisa noticed it. She saw something of him that was not driven by control or precision, and she responded to it. What began as coincidence began to feel intentional. When the trip ended, they returned to their separate routines, but the connection followed them home. Messages came first, simple check-ins that gradually became longer conversations. Calls followed, filling the spaces between their busy schedules. Days developed a rhythm that included each other without forcing it. What they had did not feel rushed. It felt steady. Over time, the distance between them closed completely. They started dating. The first year unfolded without resistance. There were no major conflicts, no dramatic misunderstandings, just consistency, effort, attention. Josh gave what he believed was his best, his time, his focus, his intention, and Lisa received it. Everything felt aligned. There were no signs of disruption, no indication that anything was shifting beneath the surface. Because sometimes the beginning of something feels so right that it hides the direction it is quietly heading. The second year did not begin with a problem. It began with a shift, so subtle it almost went unnoticed. At first, nothing felt wrong. The calls were still there, the messages still came in, the routines they had built remained intact. But something inside those routines had changed. Josh noticed it in small moments. Moments that did not demand attention but refused to be ignored. Lisa started missing calls, not occasionally, repeatedly. At first, it made sense. She was a journalist. Her work was unpredictable. She could be on assignments, in meetings, chasing stories that did not wait for convenience. Josh understood that kind of life. He lived something similar. He told himself it was normal. But then came the silence after. Missed calls were no longer followed by callbacks. Messages stayed unread longer than usual. And when they were finally answered, the replies were shorter, less engaged, less present. Josh noticed, but he did not react. He adjusted. He told himself she was under pressure, that work was demanding more of her, that things would return to normal once whatever she was dealing with settled. He chose patience. Weeks passed. The pattern did not change. It became clearer. Calls went unanswered even at times he knew she should be available. Messages sat for hours, then days, sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3. And when replies came, they carried no weight, no warmth, just enough to respond, but not enough to connect. Josh read through those messages more than once, not for the words, but for what was missing between them. He felt it, but he did not want to name it. Instead, he defended her, even in conversations she was not part of. One evening he sat again with his friends. The same setting, the same table, the same unspoken understanding that real conversations happened there. This time he was the one speaking. He explained what had been happening, carefully, selectively, choosing details that made the situation sound temporary. One of his friends listened, then leaned forward slightly. He said the signs were clear. He said when someone begins to withdraw without explanation, it is rarely accidental. Josh responded immediately. He dismissed it. He said they were reading too much into it, that not every delay in communication meant something deeper, that people go through phases, especially with demanding careers. Another friend spoke, more direct this time. He said when someone cares, they make time. Not perfect time, not constant time, but intentional time. He said silence, especially repeated silence, always means something. Josh felt the weight of those words, but he resisted them. He said they did not understand her situation. He said she had responsibilities, pressure, deadlines. He said not everything needed to be turned into a problem. The conversation shifted again, but this time something stayed with him. Not belief, but discomfort. Still, he chose to ignore it. Time moved forward. The distance grew further. Calls became rare. Messages became inconsistent. Presence became optional. And still, he held on. Not to what was happening, but to what had been. Then, one evening, everything paused. Josh was in his studio, editing, focused, trying to keep his mind occupied with work that demanded precision. His phone lit up. A message. From Lisa. His attention shifted immediately. There was a brief moment of relief, almost excitement. Finally. He opened the message, and everything inside him went still. Lisa said she needed space. She said she was going through something personal, something she was not ready to explain. She asked him to respect her decision. She added that she knew he was mature and understanding. Josh read it once, then again, then again. The words did not change, but their impact deepened each time. His mind began to move quickly, trying to understand, trying to connect this moment to everything that had led up to it. He typed a response, then deleted it. Typed again. Stopped. He did not know what to say, because for the first time, he was not in control of the outcome. That night, the silence felt heavier than usual, and somewhere beneath that silence, something inside him began to break.
3 days passed. Josh sent messages. They did not deliver. At first, he assumed it was a network issue, a temporary delay, something technical. He waited, checked again. Nothing changed. He tried calling. The call did not go through. He tried another platform. Same result. That was when the realization began to form. Slow, heavy, undeniable. He had been cut off. Not gradually, completely. Josh sat still, his phone resting in his hand, his mind refusing to accept what was becoming obvious. He opened their old messages, scrolled, read conversations from weeks ago, months ago, back to the beginning. He searched for something, a mistake, a sentence, a moment he might have missed, anything that could explain how things had shifted this far without him understanding it. But the more he searched, the less he found, and the more it hurt. That night, sleep did not come easily. He lay in bed, staring into the dark, replaying conversations in his head. Every laugh, every plan, every moment that once felt real. His mind began to ask questions he could not answer. When did it start going wrong? What did he miss? What could he have done differently? Morning came, but it did not bring relief. The thoughts followed him, into the day, into his work, into every quiet moment where his mind was left alone. At the studio, his focus collapsed. Images blurred under his hands, not because of the camera, but because his attention could not stay still enough to complete anything properly. He adjusted the same frame repeatedly, zoomed in, zoomed out, changed lighting, reverted changes. Nothing felt right, because his mind was not there. It was somewhere else, looping through memories that refused to settle. Days turned into weeks. The silence remained. No message, no explanation, no closure. Josh tried again. Calls, messages, different numbers. Nothing went through. It was as if Lisa had erased his access to her completely, and that absence became louder than anything she could have said. By the second week, his routine had already started to fall apart. Meals became irregular. Sleep became broken. He would wake up in the middle of the night, his chest tight, his thoughts racing, replaying the same questions over and over again. Sometimes he picked up his phone instinctively, as if something might have changed. It never had. By the third week, the change in him became visible. His room lost its order. Clothes remained where they were dropped. Equipment stayed unpacked. Small habits he once maintained without effort disappeared. He stopped paying attention to details, not just in his work, in himself. The discipline that once defined him faded quietly, and in its place came something unfamiliar. Restlessness, confusion, a constant low pressure in his chest that never fully went away. He avoided his friends, not intentionally, but because he did not want to hear what they would say. He already knew. They had warned him. But knowing that did not make the experience easier. It made it heavier. Because now, he understood something he once dismissed. Heartbreak was not logical. It did not follow rules. It did not require permission, and it did not wait for you to be ready. It happened, and when it did, it took control in ways he never believed possible. By the second month, the thoughts became more intense, not louder, but deeper, more persistent. He began to replay moments with precision.
As a photographer, his mind had always been trained to capture details, to freeze moments, to store them, to revisit them with clarity. Now that ability turned against him. He remembered expressions, tones, pauses in conversations. He began to question everything. Was there a moment she started to pull away? Was there something he ignored? Was there something he misunderstood? The more he searched, the more the questions multiplied, and none of them gave him answers. One night, unable to sleep, he sat alone in his room, phone in hand, scrolling through old pictures. Not just the ones stored digitally, but the ones stored in his mind. Moments in Dubai, the way she looked at him, the way things felt simple. He closed his eyes, and for a brief moment, it felt real again. Then it was gone, and the absence hit harder. By the third month, exhaustion replaced intensity. He was still hurting, but now he was tired of hurting. That was when something shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough for him to recognize that he could not continue like this. He needed help. Not advice, not distraction. Help. He reached out to a therapist. The first session was quiet. He spoke slowly, not because he did not know what to say, but because saying it out loud made it real in a way thinking never did. He explained everything, from the beginning. The confidence he once had, the belief that he was in control, the way things started, the way they changed, the way they ended. The therapist listened, carefully, without interruption, then asked a simple question. Why was it so hard to let go? Josh did not answer immediately, because the truth was not simple. It was not just about Lisa. It was about what he believed. He believed that if you did things right, things would work. He believed effort guaranteed stability. He believed understanding prevented loss. And now, all of those beliefs had been challenged at once. The therapist guided him through the process slowly, not forcing him to forget, but helping him understand. He was advised to create distance, to remove triggers, to stop revisiting conversations that only deepened the wound. Josh tried. He deleted messages, removed pictures, cleared everything he could access.
But what he could not delete was memory. And that was where the real work began. Weeks passed. Sessions continued. Gradually, the weight began to shift, not disappear, but become manageable. He started returning to structure. Small things first, cleaning his space, organizing his work, showing up again. Not fully, but enough to move forward. Time did what time always does. It moved, and slowly, it carried him with it. But something inside him had changed permanently. Not his ability to love, but his willingness to trust it the same way. Because now he knew something he once rejected completely. You can do everything right and still lose someone. Not because you failed, but because they chose differently. And that is a lesson no one truly understands until they live it. Some people will watch this and say Josh was naive. Some will say Lisa was wrong. But the real question is, have you ever believed you were in control until life proved you weren't?